Hey guys, it's Sabrina, and today we'll be talking about the worst books that I read in 2024. It's finally that time of the year. All the end of the year content is coming. How exciting! I know it's a little late to the game, so thanks for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. And let's just get into it. I think these are the most obvious books that are going to be on this list if you've watched any of my videos ever. So the first four books are all from the same video, and that is the video where I read dark romance books. The very first book on this list, and honestly, possibly the worst book that I read this year, is Haunting Adeline. This is a dark romance book where a woman falls in love with her stalker, but it's okay, don't worry, because he secretly runs this vigilante justice technology corporation where he saves trafficked kids. There's literally a scene in this. Ugh, I shouldn't be talking about this so soon into the video, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I don't care what YouTube says. There's literally a scene in this where he rapes her with a gun. Need I say more? I read that scene on the subway on my way to class. And I remember it's just like, when you're reading like a sex scene or something out in public and you're like, oh my God, I hope no one's looking at the book I'm reading. It was that feeling, but like magnified times like 100%. It was just like, oh my God, I hope no one is reading this scene where this man is raping a girl with the barrel of a gun, but she's into it. Oh my God, I hate it. I hate it so much. Like, I've seen some people talk about this book and they're like, I don't want to like kink shame, like it's not problematic, but it's like I genuinely think that like if your thing is like a stalker rapes you with the barrel of a gun, I think you should talk about that with a therapist. I'm sorry, that's my opinion. I just don't think that's a healthy kink to have. And I do believe in kink shaming, so that's just me. And the next book in a similar vein was Hooked. Again, another dark romance book. Oh, I should probably make a little bit more room for them on the screen. Right there. There we go. The next book is Hooked, another dark romance. This one was more so silly than like problematic. It's essentially a twist on the Peter Pan story, like a dark romance Peter Pan, where Peter Pan is the bad guy, Captain Hook is the good guy, and Captain Hook is going after Wendy, who is Peter Pan's daughter. This is honestly probably the least offensive of the dark romance books that I read, but I still found it to be really cringy and honestly problematic because Captain Hook is like a bad guy in the books. He's like, I don't even remember. Like, he creates drugs and he's like a drug dealer, but he's also like beating up people. But like, Peter Pan's also a bad guy and he's actually kind of a worse guy, so that makes it okay. It's just like, oh my God. I hate dark romance books. If you don't see a theme, maybe I should do another video where I like try to read dark romance books that actually sound interesting, but I think I just hate them still. The next book on this list is Corrupt. And this book follows a girl who's obsessed with her ex-boyfriend's older brother. Like, she's always actually been in love with this guy instead of the guy she actually dated. But he hates her because she sent some of his friends to jail a couple years ago. So he's trying to get revenge on her. And meanwhile, she's just all like hard-eyed for him. I was gonna say for a second, maybe this is actually the least problematic of the bunch. But there is a scene in this book, if I'm remembering correctly, where he leads her to believe that she's going to be raped, like gang raped. Um, and then it's okay though, because she actually isn't, or something like that. And it's just like, why do you like the idea of men like this? Like, I love a caring man. I love a sweet boy. I don't want a guy who's gonna make me think I'm about to be raped. I don't know what the appeal is for that. And I'm like, oh God, these books are just all the same too. So the very last one on the list is the last book I read in that video, and that is There Are No Saints. This is another like stalker dark romance story, but it takes place with a serial killer, and he's the love interest. So I like again, I get the bad boy trope, Like, I'm also interested in boys who wear leather jackets and listen to metal music. But I cannot understand. Like, we have all read Bright Young Woman, right? Like, we've all heard of the whole like Ted Bundy wasn't actually hot thing. It was just like girls idolizing him for no fucking reason. And we could all agree that the girls who idolize Ted Bundy and like Charles Manson, there's something wrong with them and they should seek help. We can all agree about that. But then when someone wants to read a dark romance book where the love interest is a serial killer, or where the love interest is a stalker, or where the love interest is like raping the girl, then that's okay. Like, I don't get the disconnect there. Just because, like, you're not actually idolizing a real serial killer doesn't make it better in my mind. Like, I can understand, like, role play or something like that, but I can't understand, like, reading a book and being like, yeah, I love this love interest. I think they should be together after he just made her feel that she was going to be raped. I don't get it. And I don't think I'm ever gonna get it. And if you like dark romance books, like, have your fun. But I am gonna judge you a little bit. That's all I'm gonna say. I was gonna start this video with a whole disclaimer, like, if these are your favorite books, that's okay. But, like, you're an adult, probably, if you're watching this, or I mean, my demographics aren't like children, so you should be smart enough to understand that we can have different tastes in books, and that's okay. I will say, dark romance books, maybe where I draw the line. Maybe you're not okay if you like dark romance books. That's just my personal opinion. So let's get on to maybe less offensive books that I still just hated. Number 2, we are coming in hot with a fan favorite, and that is Legends of Lawface. I wanted to like this book, I think. Um, if you don't know, which would be crazy because this is such a popular book, this book follows like a mercenary orc who decides that she wants to leave that life behind and open a coffee shop and live like a peaceful, nice life. But the book is just like her going to the city where she wants to open the coffee shop, and then her finding a place for the coffee shop, and then her hiring someone to build the coffee shop, and then her finding someone to man the register of the coffee shop, and then her finding someone to make sweet treats for the coffee shop. And that's like the whole fucking thing. And it was just so ridiculously boring. Like, I don't understand why someone would want to read that. I don't get it. And then, like, there's supposed to be small moments of conflict. Like, there's this, I don't know, like a gang or something that, like, is, like, threatening their peace. Um, and then it's just resolved so fucking easily. And there's like no moment of real conflict in the book at all. And I feel like that's something you learn early on in like a writing course. Like when they talk about like the stages of a book, like you need some conflict for your characters or it's just boring as fuck. And that's what this book was, boring as fuck. It was just such a snooze fest. Like I want to say that I understand if you like it cuz in theory I can understand why someone would like a cozy fantasy, but for this one I just do not get it at all. I really don't. Like I'm happy for you. I do not understand you though. Next, we have Fates and Furies. This book, oh my god. This book actually really upsets me because for some reason I thought I was gonna love it. It's like a literary fiction book, and so for some reason the betrayal feels even worse for this one. So essentially, this book is based off of the premise that a marriage looks different to the people inside of it. So first you follow the husband's point of view. It's about this couple that got married very young. You're following the husband's point of view. He came from a very wealthy family, but then his father died and his mother decided to live well below their means so that the children could inherit the money later. However, as soon as he marries his wife, she is upset about it and she decides to cut him off from the fortune. So they're living this like very poor, struggling life, and he's like an aspiring playwright. And so of course later on in the book he becomes a famous playwright because that's what happens to mediocre men. And then the second half of the book follows his wife's perspective, which is somehow just as boring, even though she's a woman. Who would have thought? This book was just so overwritten. Like I can't draw out the word so long enough to properly describe it. It was just so bad. It just was trying really hard to be profound and it came off as really corny. I remember in particular there's this moment in this book where right after I think his name was like Laszlo or something like that, but I don't want to say because it could be wrong. Right after the guy's dad dies, he's like 11 years old, and his mom decides to move him into like a regular middle class home instead of the fancy mansion they've been living in. And his reaction on the page is to look at her and say, betrayal. Who talks like that? Especially an 11-year-old? Like, that's just so over dramatic and so stupid. And it's really stuck out with me as time as, like, the purpose encapsulation of what this book is. It's trying so hard and it's so stupid. The author also, like, the thing is, like, I don't want to say the writing is bad because she clearly had some skill with the writing. Like, there were some beautiful sentences, even though I believe that most of it was overwritten. But she also was just writing from such a distance from the characters that you couldn't like feel for them at all. It just felt like you were watching them instead of like being with them, if that makes any sense. It was just a bad book. I did not like it, and that's why it's made the worst books of 2024 list. Next book is another favorite, which I might upset some people with, and that is The House on the Cilan Sea. This is another cozy fantasy book, so I really should have learned my lesson and just not read any of these cozy fantasy books, but I was doing it for a vlog, another vlog that just did not go well for me. This book follows a main character who works at the Department of Magical Youth. So essentially, his job is to go to like these orphanages that have magical children and evaluate them and like basically shut them down most of the time, is what it seems like he actually does. And then he's assigned like a super secret top mission to go to this one orphanage where there are like really unique magical children. And then his whole perspective changes. Blah, blah, blah. He falls in love. And blah, 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 blah. It was dumb. It was dumb. Like, I will say, that's not even the reason this is on the list. My personal enjoyment of this book was like 2 stars. I just thought it was boring and kind of dumb, but I didn't like absolutely hate it. But then I went onto Goodreads to rate this book, and as I always do, I read some other reviews just to like kind of see what other people are thinking of the book. And I came across a review that talked about the inspiration for this book. This book was inspired by Indian boarding schools. That's right. A key step in the genocide of Native Americans. That's right. These places where Native children were stripped of their culture, were beaten, were emotionally abused, were sexually abused, were fucking killed and buried in mass unmarked graves. Like, he turned that inspiration into like this quirky, cute book. And that's just disgusting to me. I can't get over that. And like, this is a book where if you're divorced from all of that, I can almost see why someone would like it, because although it is cozy fantasy and I don't like it, I can understand how someone might be drawn in by all the cute elements and like it. But then I can't understand like how you could like it hearing about the inspiration. And I want to believe that everyone who rates this book so highly just hasn't heard the inspiration. But I also find that really hard to believe because it was one of the top reviews on Goodreads. I easily found it with just a little bit of looking. I know that not everyone does that. Like, not the average book reader assuredly doesn't do that. People online on BookTube are rating this highly, and it's like, it's part of your job to kind of like see other reviews. So why aren't you investigating that a little further? I don't know. This book was just I hated it. I hate it because of that reason. And I can't get over it. I could have ranted about it for like a full year. I literally wrote a paper in law school about how the Indian boarding schools were a key step in the genocide of Native Americans. And I went through the 10 different steps of genocide and talked about how like Indian boarding schools related to each fucking step. Like, ugh, I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm gonna stop talking about it now because I could go on for a while. I don't want this video to be like 40 minutes long. Next, we have A Perfect Marriage. This book follows an attorney wife and like a writer husband. The husband is having an affair, and he's like so bold in his affair that he brings his mistress to their second house, which is like a lake house or something like that. I don't know. And then one day she's found dead in the bed at their second house. And so at the very beginning of the novel, the attorney wife finds out about this and she realizes that her husband is the number one suspect. He's quickly arrested or put, like, deemed someone who's under suspicion. I don't know. I went to law school. I can't tell you any words relating to the law. And she decides that she's going to personally represent him. And the book is just full of just the husband making the stupidest fucking mistakes known to man. Like, at one point, this man is arrested, but he's like, I'm innocent. I'm gonna escape jail. It's like, dude, even if you were innocent in the first place, why would you escape from jail? Because regardless, you're gonna be doing fucking jail time then. They don't just like, they don't just decide that you escaping jail was no big deal because you were actually innocent in the long run. Like, that's not how that works. And he was just like so stupid the entire time. And it's just like something like that, which is just so brazenly dumb that it's like no one would actually do that in their right mind. But he was supposed to be in his right mind. And it was just awful. But I gotta say, the worst part of this book is the twist at the end, which I will not share here because my goal here is not to spoil the books, but oh my god, if you've read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I will say that this is like a very easily readable book. Like, it was very entertaining despite it being very bad. So I could understand how some people could like it. But then that twist at the end was so stupid. It was so stupid. Like, I can't imagine reading that and being like, whoa. Like, I just read it and I was like, what the fuck? I thought it was ridiculous. And it just ruined anything that the book could have been. Not that I was liking the book before then. And it just really cemented its place as one of the worst books I've ever read. Definitely. After that, we have A Kiss Before Dying. This one hurts even more because it's by the author of Rosemary's Baby and The Stepford Wives, both books that I read last year and absolutely loved. But sadly, this book did not meet my expectations. Essentially, you're following this dude who just really wants to be wealthy, and that's like his only aspiration in life. And he's this awful dude, because obviously, if that's your aspiration, you're gonna be an awful dude. So he finds a wealthy girl in college, and he's dating her, and then he gets her pregnant. And he wants her to have an abortion, and she doesn't want to have an abortion. So he tries to trick her into having an abortion, but she doesn't do it. She doesn't take the pills. And then he decides, guess I gotta kill her. Because of course that's what he decides. And the story unfolds from there. And I will say that, like, now that I'm thinking about that, some of that might be considered spoilery. I'm sorry. I already said it. I can't take it back. I could edit it out, but I'm not going to. Because the thing about this book is that it is so fucking slow. It is so fucking slow. It takes like 100 pages for anything to happen. And the whole time, like, I read books fairly quickly, especially like a thriller like this. I can usually pop out in like a day or two. This book took me like weeks, probably. Like, I'm saying this, I don't even know how long it took. It felt like it took months because that's how slow the book was. It didn't actually take months, but that's how it feels in my mind thinking about reading this book because it was just so painfully slow, and it was also just dumb. Honestly, I will say the twist got me. It was a clever twist towards like the middle of the book, but ultimately just criminally slow and boring, and I couldn't stand it. And honestly, again, just made so much worse by the fact that the author has written good books before. So it's like, why couldn't you just write another good one? Why couldn't that have been the course that you have taken? So also, this book has been like listed as one of the best like crime books ever, and I need to see that list because I'm sure it's just full of terrible books then, because whoever made that list has to have bad taste. Next, we have American Gods by Neil Gaiman, another one that a lot of people really love. And I will say, I disliked this book before someone commented on the video telling me what a piece of shit Neil Gaiman was, which I was not aware of at all until I saw that comment. So thank you to the person who commented that. I really appreciate when you guys like help me be better informed about things. So my hatred of this book does not even come from that. That's just an added bonus factor on top of the fact that I did not like the book. So essentially, this book is about a war between the old gods and the new. So for old gods, think like Greek gods, Norse gods, and for new gods, think like technology, media, railroads. That's the kind of thing it's doing. But all of these things are personified into like actual people. So there's this war between these gods, but essentially the book follows our main character Shadow, who at the very beginning of the book is just getting out of prison, and he's so excited to finally like live his life, be with his wife, and then as soon as he gets out, he gets news that his wife died in a car crash. And then he's approached by this man named Wednesday who has a job offer for him. And so the book kind of follows him teaming up with Wednesday, who is front row to this war between the gods. I feel like this book is interesting in theory, but not execution. Like, the idea of a war between the gods sounds cool, but then you start reading it, and first of all, like, nothing happens the bulk of the book. And second of all, the way that he portrayed the new gods was just so corny. Like, he had them wearing sunglasses and limousines. It just felt like very 2000 portrayal of like what cool is and what like is modern. But like, I genuinely felt relieved when finishing this book, which is not a good sign for any book. I was just glad it was over. Again, another comically, criminally is the word I meant to say, not comically, but I could say comically as well. Another criminally terrible book. Send him to jail. Not even for the bad things he's done. Send him to jail for that too, but extend his sentence for writing this book. And that's all I have to say about that. And the very last book on this list is Cell by Stephen King. Stephen King is just such a hard author, honestly, to like because some of his books are so fucking good, but then the other ones are just terrible. Like, there is no in between. I'm either gonna love it or I'm gonna hate it, and this is a book that I did not like. Essentially, at the beginning of the novel, whoever is on their cell phone at a certain time turns into a zombie. So it's following this main character who's like this graphic designer, artist, or something, and he's in Boston in the middle of the city when this event occurs. So he sees firsthand all these people suddenly turning into zombies and going crazy. He teams up with another couple of people who aren't zombified and they're hiding. But then he's like, I need to go check on my son and wife and see if they're okay. And of course, he lives very far away. So they have to walk all the way there. And it's just like, it's just a stupid book. I'm sorry. It's just such a stupid premise. Like, what are you even trying to say here? I think about a Stephen King book like Pet Cemetery, which says so much about grief and love. And then I think about this book where the ultimate message is like, cell phones turn people into zombies. It's like, okay, dude, that's nothing new or interesting to say. It's just a stereotypical old man talking about technology. Not even that he's wrong necessarily. Like, cell phones certainly aren't good for us, but it's still just a stupid critique, honestly. There's another book that was just very slow and boring. And there's also a moment in this book where the main character, who's like middle-aged man, one of the other main characters is a 15-year-old girl, and he imagines her naked. Which is another thing about Stephen King is that, like, he has weird pervy moments in his books sometimes, which I do not like. And unfortunately, this book had one of those, and it was a bad book, and it was stupid. And that's why I did not like it, and that's why I made this list. So there you go, guys. Those are my worst books of 2024. Let me know down below what your worst books of 2024 was, because I love talking shit about books. So I'm so excited to see what you guys possibly say. And I will see you soon in another video. Goodbye.